Hello and welcome back to Page Chewing Comics and Manga. This is Pick of the Week, episode number 52. This is a podcast where we talk about mostly new single issue comics. My name is Mike and I'm back here once again with my friend Steve. If you're joining us for the first time, we are doing weekly polls, and comics people know what that means. But we're also finding new comics that appeal to us, depending on our, quirky tastes. So as we did last time, Steve, I thought we'd start us off again with kind of a general question. So I wanted to ask you, we've kind of talked about this before, but how do you feel about variant covers? Because when I started with the comic books, they didn't have those back in the kind of 80s and 90s. And so for me, this has been kind of a new thing. And I'm just curious what you think about them. And maybe if there are different options, do you go for a particular variant cover?
Well, it's a tricky one. Variant covers in general, I see it both ways. On one hand, it's a way for them to sell more books, which I get. I guess it's a business thing. On the other hand, it can be a lot. So if you're a fan of a series and there's 5 different variant covers, as a collector, you kind of have this draw to get all of them. Which, I don't know. For me, I'm not really drawn to variant covers unless it's something that really pops out at me. There's been a few that I had no interest in the book and ended up buying the book anyway because the variant cover looked so cool. And then I bring it home and it's like, okay, now what? Like I have it, but I can look at it, I guess. So, yeah, I think it's nice for people who want to buy them. But if you're someone who doesn't want to, you don't feel obligated to buy them if you're not into them. So I can kind of see both ways. And I also think it helps the stores because it draws more people, and the people who do like to buy them can buy them. So it's one of those things where if you don't like variant covers, don't support them. Just buy whatever cover you like best or whichever is available to you. And if you do like them, then enjoy it.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense. For me, I don't mind having inconsistency. So usually there's like cover A, or sometimes there are, actually I've noticed sometimes there are not variant covers. And I've even noticed there are as many as like 20 or 30. But if you want consistency, you might want to have the same kind of, cover A, because you will, for some of us, like to see, like just that maybe comfort, but because you can get some very wild variations. One of the things that I think about is maybe, but this is in the back of my mind, but maybe there might be a rare one that might be worth more, or it's a particular artist. And as I get to know artists better, I am noticing once in a while, like who did this variant cover. So, but it really isn't. The there's no option. So like I will go to the store and there's maybe one left. And so I just pick like one of the ones I have today. I'm sure it's a variant cover. Anyway, so yeah, it's something that I'm getting used to. And I'm definitely not, I don't ever see myself buying all of the covers, but who knows, maybe one day I'll get there, but it's crazy a little bit to me to do that. But
yeah, I know people who seek out every cover because they like to have every single variant of the series that they enjoy. Or like for me, if there's an artist I really like and there's a variant cover, I might go out and find it and try to find it. Just even if it's a series I don't like, just because I think it's a cool variant, I want to support the artist. But if I don't find it, it's not a huge deal.
yeah.
So it's one of those things. I see both sides of it, but I don't usually seek them out. But for people who do like it, then I'm happy for them. And enjoy your stack of books, I guess. Yeah, so now we have quite a few books this week. It sounds like you had a really good week. We haven't gotten into it, of course, but I had kind of a down week, but we'll talk about it. It's kind of a tough one. The first one, though, wasn't too bad, which is Dick Tracy 3. This is by Mad Cave. This issue, I think the first two issues came out of the gate pretty solid. It was at a really good pace. And he also had the impression that I had to slow down a little bit. I think there has to be a moment to catch your breath a little bit. And I think this was that issue for this series. It still does dip into themes of PTSD and psychological trauma of being in war and being in combat and being having those experiences, and they carry over for Dick Tracy. I think that's a really powerful thing to explore, and I think they did it. They're doing a good job with it. I'm also enjoying the adult angle they're taking. They're not going all out on Dick Tracy. They're not reinventing it to be this completely different thing. It's still Dick Tracy, but they are giving it some adult elements, but it's not going too far. So it's enough to kind of entice adults who are like me, who are nostalgic about Dick Tracy. It's not like a children's story, but it's also not like, late night Cinemax either. So, I think they're writing that line pretty good. I think they're doing a good job with it. I'm still enjoying the art. And other than the last page, this issue was a little bit, it was steady, but there wasn't a whole lot until the very end. So yeah, I'm still on board with this one. I think they're onto something, and I hope they continue churning these out.
Yeah, I like that it's kind of a different take. It's kind of similar to some of the G.I. Joe stuff, maybe. And I read the Transformers, I think, issue 1, which it was like a much more kind of adult take on things. So it sounds like you're going to keep going with the series. So for my first one, I have something that is a publisher that's kind of new to me. And the publisher is EC Comics, which I think has been around for quite some time. And this title is Epitaphs from the Abyss. And it has the cover, in this case, the one I have is, really, really cool. Has kind of the lettering has like what you might see from horror films in the 1950s. So it's got that appealed to me. So this is, there are many authors here. This is an anthology series. I don't think it's worth listing all the authors at this time. But there's 4 stories, and they're all very short, maybe 6 pages or so, maybe a little bit more. Kind of depends. I think the one that I like the most actually was the shortest. And I will just maybe call out the story called Family Values. It was, I had a really kind of cliffhanger type of ending that, kind of came at you from out of nowhere. And I appreciated that. Some of the other stories were just really short, and I wonder about the whole kind of anthology setup for comics. And I actually have another one to talk about so I have something else for comparison today, which I think is great. And the other story where I really liked the artwork was called Us Versus Us. And one thing I will say is that a few of the stories were very political, and were commenting on issues such as, abortion and vaccinations and that kind of thing, which doesn't necessarily, well, some of that is political, I guess, in the United States. I know we have listeners in different countries. The last thing I will say that I didn't really like is they have kind of like a crypt keeper character that narrates throughout. I just don't think it's necessary. It just kind of, he's kind of like is he like a He's like an Undertaker guy with rotting flesh. Anyway, but he's wearing a suit and hat. So it wasn't bad, but it just didn't. I don't. Yeah, it just difficult to make this work. And so a few of these were not big hits. Two of the stories I don't think really were big hits for me.
I'm a little bit worried about anthologies now with comics because it's very hit or miss, but it sounds like it was a hit for you.
Yeah, I this one I'm more lukewarm than the other one I'll be talking about, which is actually my pick of the week. So, yeah, this one is I'm really somewhere in the middle, and I will have probably look through the next one to see if I continue or not.
Nice. Well, the next one for me, I don't know why I picked this up. It was a number one. It was a Valiant comic. Back in the early, I think it was probably 2010s or so, there was this resurgence with Valiant, and they relaunched their line. I thought some of them were okay. I remember that it was pretty popular. I'm not sure what happened, why they stopped. But I thought Eternal Warriors, number one, looks like a Western. Okay, I'll try it out. It lost me pretty quick. The art was fine. I don't know if these characters are there's a history with the characters, or there's something I should know. I would appreciate it more if I knew more about the characters' histories, who they were, but there's some time travel involved, and there's some historical figures that they interweave into the story, and I just thought it was kind of goofy. I just they lost me pretty fast. I just lost interest, and it just didn't work for me. Maybe if I was more familiar with the line, with the characters, I would appreciate it more, but I won't be continuing this one.
So the reason I'm laughing is because I picked that one up too, yesterday. So I haven't got to it yet. So I think maybe it got shipped to you earlier, where you are. So that's a bummer. But, anyway.
It was something.
So next for me is, and this is the issue 4 out of 4. So this is the finale of Creature from the Black Lagoon Lives. This was one that was on my pull list, and with the final issue here, I'm a little bit disappointed. The artwork is very atmospheric, and there's just the issue I have is with the main antagonist. I really liked kind of where it was going, but they just did something really strange with the primary kind of antagonist, who we just thought was just kind of criminal, killer. I'm not going to say what that is, because I think that isn't revealed until late. I think the ending was a little bit kind of out of the ordinary, so I was just expecting a little bit more from Ram V. And I know he's not the only author. So for those of you that are interested in this series, I think, and I am a fan of Creature from the Black Lagoon. I kind of like some of these universal monsters, and I think there's going to be others. The story deals with themes of loss and discrimination and kind of power over nature or the other, in quotes. So that's the end of that series. I was wondering, should we... This is bad. Maybe I should have asked you before, Steve, but maybe at the end of a series, we should say if it gets like a Chewy award or something. Came up with that.
What do you think? Is it a Chewy award?
I don't know if it does, but that would get kind of like the seal of approval. But I think if you're a fan of, this kind of stuff, then it's not bad. I'm sure the trade paperback will come out probably. probably won't be very long. But generally, it's I liked it overall. The ending just was not what I was hoping for.
So would you say an applause or a wah?
Oh gosh, I'm so bad at like I'm always kind of a person that's in the middle. This is really somewhere between. It's not a sarcastic clap, but it's a slow clap, or I don't know. I was a little bit disappointed at the end. So yeah.
It gets crickets. And that's not the want. So,
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, the next one for me is King Spawn. So the vampire heaven and hell thing is going from Spawn 350. It's still going. And I want something to happen soon because it seems like we're meandering. When you have so many titles that are I don't know if you call it an event, but there's so many titles that are involved in this conflict, and it just feels like we're not going anywhere. Like what's going on here? Like let's move the story along. Like what's happening? And it just doesn't feel like there's any movement. There just doesn't feel like a whole lot happens. Like you read it, some books you read and it feels like, wow, that's a lot to happen in 28 pages or whatever. I can read this one and it's like, okay, like the story didn't move at all. There's no progress, really. There's really nothing happened. And while it's fine when you read it, at the end, you just feel kind of like, okay, like nothing happened. And when you go month to month, it's not, you're not really excited to read it because nothing really is happening yet. But in this one, Spawn gets healed and gets an assist, gets some help. He's still depowered. That's another thing that's going, is that if you're depowered, it just feels like that's an opportunity to do something dramatic with it. If your hero is depowered, do something really significant with that. And maybe they will, but it just feels like, oh look, he's dispowered. Okay, like he's been hurt, but let's do something that's really going to change things, because it just feels a little anticlimactic to have this huge event months ago, and then now it's like, okay, what's happening? Like nothing really happens. And we'll talk about another book later here in a minute that a lot happens in every issue, and we've gone very far in less than a dozen issues. I mean, the story has progressed a lot. I know it's comparing apples to oranges when you compare a long running series like Spawn to something that just launched a year ago. I know it's not the same, but it's when you're reading month to month, you're reading so many different titles that tie into it. It just feels like, okay, let's move on. Let's progress. So I'm really on the edge with King Spawn and Spawn. I've dropped off the rest of them, but I'm just still hanging on. But I'm not. It's just not. And it's to the point now where if there was more on the shelf this week, it seemed like a light week a little bit. Mm-hmm. If there was more on the shelves, I probably wouldn't have picked it up. But we'll see next month.
So all of those characters in the Spawn universe still are kind of lacking in their, abilities. Okay.
Yeah, but it doesn't feel like anything's happened with it. It's like this thing happens, then if this story is going to lead up to this, then do something with it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, now for something completely different. This is I'm going to be speaking about a comic called The Addiction. This is a case where I don't know what compelled me to pick it up. It might have been the artwork, maybe, but I just didn't know what I was getting into. This is I think it's a completely independent. So there's no like publisher name. It's the name of two people, Vincent Zurzolo and David Quinn. So appears to be somebody. One of those people owns a comic trading store, or I'm sure people that are listening know much better than I. So he may have bankrolled this. At any rate, the art is done by Claudia Balboni, and I really have to say that's the best thing going for it. I think is the artwork. There is a somewhat interesting premise. You have a uh, character named Dr. Nikki who has some ability to drug you with. She can inflict chemical changes with her touch. There's also elements of her dealing with kind of drug cartels and that sort of side of things. So that's could be an interesting premise, but I just really found it difficult to follow, and I just kind of I just felt like it wasn't grabbing me. So I'm not gonna. I think I'm out with this series, but I do appreciate seeing something like that's self-published, and it ended up being more of like a superhero story, and I wasn't really expecting that. I thought it was going to be something else.
So I always find it tough to give up on a series that is more independent. That's kind of a passion project. We'll talk more about that here in a minute. But I always find it tough to give up on those because I know how much it takes, and I admire the fact that people do that they put themselves out there. So it's tough.
Yeah, I maybe I shouldn't say I'm out but I just it's just not my. It's a superhero story, and right now, Steve, I'm kind of down on that kind of stuff more than I was before. I will come back one time, but right now, I'm just that's one of the main reasons for me. I think I'm just nothing else that I've picked really is much of a superhero kind of story.
And I was looking for more information on the next one before we get into it. Mm-hmm. But the next one is one that we both read. And I know that the big thing on this one was the change in the artist, which I'm hoping I don't butcher his name, Andre Lima Arejo, I think, and I believe the same colorist, Dave McCaig. So it was less jarring for me than I expected. And while I love Fumara's work, obviously we talk about it whenever there's a Sacrificer's book, how great the art is. It didn't put me off as much as I thought it would. It does feel like the same style, so it wasn't too jarring of a change. But what I will say about this one, it's one I was referencing a second ago when I talked about Spawn, is that we have the roles of our characters have reversed almost completely in 10 issues. And when you look back and see how far we've gone in 10 issues, it feels like this was like 20 or 30 issues because we've gone so far. And we have so much movement and so much happens, and you compare it to other superhero books, other established books that have been going forever, you just don't get that same feeling like things are really happening. And there are runs out there that do have that feeling. Like there's those really great runs with an artist or a writer that do capture that feeling for you. But I'm just blown away with how far we've come in this story, and we've almost come full circle by the end of issue 10. And there are more questions now. I do have a couple of questions about what exactly happened in this one, because there's some devastation that happens. But yeah, I think the role reversal of the main characters is just fun to watch. So, but I'm into that kind of thing. So yeah, I really liked this issue, and the artist didn't affect me too much. What would you think about this one?
Yeah, the change in artist is noticeable, but it's not enough to really take away from my enjoyment, and the writing is great. In this particular issue, there's not a lot of dialogue, so I think there's 3 or 4 pages in a row where where there's almost no word, no dialogue, nothing written. So you're dependent on the artist right there, to tell the story. And I found it to be interesting, and we have kind of more of a horror element here as well. And one thing that I noticed, I don't think it's really a spoiler, so that in this world, a lot of the characters are, they're like animals. One of the main characters, or they represent nature or what have you. But in this issue, Soluna, who's one of the main characters, comes across humans. So I don't think that's really a spoiler, but I found, is that an artistic choice? I don't know. I don't think so. But I don't think we've seen too many like kind of normal looking humans. Everybody is like a bird or like I think there's even characters that are like from an orca whale community, or anyway, just something else that I noticed. But this is easily tied with my pick of the week. I really like this one more than issue 9.
Yeah, from what I can see is that this is a guest artist. I'm not sure how long they'll be on the book, but it looks like Fumara will be back.
Okay.
But like, yeah, I think it was noticeable, but not enough for me to just like with the Ultimate Spider-Man. That change of artist was very noticeable, and it really took away. I feel like it took away from the book, just because I love I forget the original artist, but yeah, that was really jarring. This one wasn't as jarring, but yeah, this one did take a turn for sure. But just looking back on how far we've come, but this is going to be just one of those books that I can see myself buying the hardcover of and just reading over and over again when it's available. It's just such a great story. But yeah, it was really close to being my pick of the week too.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have another one coming up here that easily could have been tied for my pick of the week as well, but I'm going to feature something that's new, that really surprised me. And this is, I don't know if you've read it, Steve, so I will be very careful. This is Under Heist number 5, and it is the finale, which surprised me. I didn't expect it to end.
No, already?
Yeah, I'm really enjoying the series. And so that's the first thing I wanted to say is the ending was maybe a little bit abrupt for me. I'm not saying it was a bad ending. I kind of like the way it ended. I will just comment on there's these little subtle details that you notice in here. Background characters that we, for whatever reason, never see their faces. I just notice, I'm trying to notice these things more, I just really, really appreciate stuff like that. We have a lot of kind of similar challenges with the main character, David, which we may have touched on earlier. But I have to say, this series is really great. It's certainly not for everybody. I did look at a few reviews online. I don't know if it's getting the love that it deserves, in my opinion. But I recommend for people that are interested in kind of crime / supernatural horror stuff. So it's a gender or genre bender, I guess. Multi-genre. And I just think Boom Studios is putting out some good horror stuff, because another one I'm going to talk about is Boom Studios. So you got to hand it to the Lapham team. They're doing the artwork, the writing. I don't know what else. I just really, really happy I read this. I was just bummed that it ended. I'm very curious to hear what you think.
I haven't read it yet.
I know.
Yeah. What would you give this? Would you give it a thumbs up, thumbs down, or crickets?
Oh, thumbs up, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. For sure.
Yeah, I'm so jealous that you you finished it.
One thing I will say, there is some stuff that's a little confusing, and I
Mhm.
want to go back and reread it. I don't know if
Okay.
all will be revealed. So you might it might be beneficial to you to
Oh,
reread
to
the
reread.
first three and then get caught up. But I'm curious if you do that.
Thanks for trying to make me feel better. But I do think that this is one of those books that I missed some things, and I think the third issue that you had pointed out about
Okay.
little details in the background. So this is one of those that I know there's a lot that you have to look for, that you noted a lot of little nuances in the artwork that you can pick out. So yeah, I think there's a lot to explore. I think even a reread would be good, just to go back through it and kind of check it out. All right. So my next one is Remote Space 2. All right. So this is the thing with Remote Space. I really appreciate the fact that Cliff Rathburn is putting himself out there. He's telling the story. It's a one man show. He's doing it all by himself. I really respect that. And I really want to like this book. I really do. I want to like it. I think there's lots of world building that they did in the first issue. Lots of things that to kind of jump off of and to explore and to play with. It kind of created a sandbox to play in, because the history, and even though it was a bit of an info dump, there was a lot to kind of take in. So I like the sandbox they created. The problem I'm having is that the characters I just don't care about. I'm not attached to them. I can't get into them. I can't. I'm not invested in the characters, and the plot just isn't. It isn't pulling me in. It's not grabbing me. I just can't get into it. I can't sink my teeth into it. I find that like my mind is wandering when I'm reading it, even though I love the setup. It's just not there for me yet. So I'm hoping that it turns around. I really am. So I'll read it again. I'll read the next one, and I'll see what happens. But I really want to like this book. I really, really do, just because I respect what Cliff Rathburn's doing, and that he's doing this by himself. So I'll support it just because of that. So
Yeah, I'm a sucker for those kinds of artists that are doing it all. I think when we did the number 50 podcast, I mentioned Daniel Klaus, and that's what he does. And I really appreciate that, because you're kind of getting just the one vision. That is essentially what's happening with the Underheist. Is it's the artwork and writing is by the same team. Okay, so I guess we are coming up now to our picks of the week. And for me, this was a huge surprise. Um, as I mentioned before, I read one other anthology series, which was Epitaphs from the Abyss. And I have another one called Hello Darkness. This is also from Boom Studios, and it's horror. So I just mentioned earlier, I really appreciate what Boom is doing in terms of horror. So this is there are actually 7 authors or 7 stories in here, probably more than 7 authors. And I have to point out, Steve, if you didn't notice, got your buddy Garth Ennis in here, and he's teaming up with Becky Cloonan, who we know. Yeah. So I had to mention that right off the top here, and I have to say that that story was one of my favorites. And I'm just going to highlight that story. It's about a very near future, and based on a current threat in Eastern Europe that we're familiar with right now in our lives, and what could happen. And it was a very slow build, even though it's a short story. I don't know how Garth Ennis does it. It seems like I read a full page comic book from just that one story. It's probably 7 or 8 pages, maybe. There is a lot of dialogue. There's like almost no action, but it's just that well written, and the artwork is excellent with very kind of striking, lines. Good use of black, I would say, as well. So there's quite a few other stories that also I really liked. One of them, which was both disgusting and funny, is called the Foster, and it's about a man who I guess he is kind of growing another limb on his body, but it's like totally out in the open. It's like, and then so he basically has like another hand, and you can kind of imagine what. Anyway, it doesn't go so well, but it's really out there. I should probably shout out the writer. That one is very R-rated. This is written by Steve Orlando and illustrated by Al Kaplan. A few others that at least one other that I really liked was called Contagious. It's, it has something to do with children and an epidemic, and it's just bad things happening. There's even a James Tinian in here, which I didn't quite understand because it seems to be in the universe of something is killing the children. I'm not saying it's bad. It's really short, though. It's just, I don't know if that's his thing, because it just seemed like it's not bad. It just didn't really get going, and the artwork is great. I will finally mention that there's an editor's note at the end that says comic anthologies don't typically work in comics, but the hope from I don't know if you'd call him the editor, is, I'm not going for nostalgia, and I'm hoping to breathe new life into the comics anthology. So I just really liked it. I've added it to my subscription list, and the cover.
Oh wow, sounds serious.
Yeah, the cover is really weird too.
Yeah, I like the cover. I looked up on the Boom Studios website. Wow, commitment. You got it to your pull list.
Yeah, I was shocked. I've just lost 2, and so I'm glad I've added 1. These other series ended. One, they're pretty short, so hopefully this will continue.
Oh.
On the right,
Very nice.
on the right path with the quality. I mean, the quality is just great. So it's Bryce Carlson who is kind of the developer and curator of this series.
Nice. Well, damn. Now I have to check that out.
Yeah, I was really shocked.
So for my pick, I don't think it's a surprise for anyone. I tried to not pick this one. I don't want to be too predictable, but it's the Six Fingers #5. So I've just fallen in love with the Six Fingers in the left hand. I love the way that they weave in and out of each other, and they work together, and they really come to this conclusion that just blew me away. I did not see coming, and I just love this series. I just love what they did with it. And I will say, the Six Fingers, this final issue didn't change the conclusion really at all, but it complemented it in a way that was enough that it didn't try to outdo, or didn't try to kind of outshine what they've already established as what was behind everything. So if that makes any sense, I'm trying to not give spoilers here, but it complements what they did with the final issue of the Left Hand, and it was great. I love that it complements it in a way. And this is a series that I'm going to read throughout there's a few series that I'll read kind of just recreationally throughout the year, or throughout the years. I'll pick up and read again just for fun. this is going to be one of those series. This is one that I'll reread over and over again just because I want to experience it again. So I was close to getting the Sacrificers as my pick, but those are really those were the only two that were in contention. The rest of them just weren't on that level. But I love the final issue, what they did. I love the series. Can't say enough good things about it. It just gave me goosebumps when I finished this one. And yeah, it's really bleak and dark, and it's depressing, but I love it. It's great. It's just so good.
Yeah. So, as you asked me, does it get a thumbs up? The series probably gets a big thumbs up from you then, right? All right.
Definitely, yeah. Definitely gets an applause.
Cool.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I'll miss the series, but I'm hoping that we'll get a kind of a hardcover or some kind of collection that has both put together. I'll eat that up. So I'll be on the lookout for that.
Yeah, that would be great to have both of them in the same, in the same trade paperback or hardcover. That would be awesome.
Yeah, I really hope they do that. It kind of doesn't make sense. I guess you could read them individually, but it's just it makes so much more sense when you read them together. So I'm glad I stumbled upon this series by accident. But yeah, so kind of a down week for me. It sounds like you had a good week.
Yeah.
But what are you looking forward to this coming week, or what did you already buy?
Yes, I already picked up a few comics. So I have something from Dark Horse. It's called Paranoid Gardens. The cover is really crazy, and I couldn't help myself. I started reading it already. It's just out there. I can tell it's really, really out there, and I'm loving the artwork. So I was gonna say Eternal Warriors, but unfortunately, I mean I do have that one coming up too. But no, I'm really excited about this one. I don't know the authors very well, but it's weird. That's me, I
guess. So yeah, sounds like a good week. I'm not sure exactly what all I was muted apparently, so I'm not sure if you heard my the book I'm most looking forward to. I don't think you heard that at all, but I was talking about it. You didn't hear that all?
No, I didn't. I think you were. Okay. I think you were muted, but I also thought maybe it was me.
No, it was a new mistake. So, yeah, this week I am looking forward to Drawing Blood, the new issue of Drawing Blood, and also there's a book that I always watch the weekly comic book reviews on Wednesday mornings on, is it Comic Book Philosophizers YouTube channel? And there was one he mentioned called, geez, I just had it on my screen. It was called Daisy Chain. Number 1, it's a revenge tale. Looks violent and bloody. And I'm hoping it's not a style over substance situation. So, but yeah, I'm looking forward to trying that one out and seeing what this week has in store for us. But we'll be back next week. Mike is traveling for a few weeks after that, but we'll be around. So if you'd like to get in touch with us and tell us how awful our picks were, there's a link in the description to send us a message, or you can also join our forums. It's a small, tightly knit community, and we'd love to have you if you'd like to join us, talk about comic books, movies, sports. We're looking for more people for our fantasy football team. So you'd like to join that, come and say hello, and yeah, love to chat with you. So until then, we will talk to everyone very soon.
Bye.